shaking, and you feel your heart is breaking. Take my hand, no hesitating. Oh, when you're just so tired of trying, all alone you feel like hiding. Together we'll keep fighting. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't stop now. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna mountains too high we can climb it. Feel this, we're taking the moment. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Can you see the sun is shining like a new hope? Feel it rising, coming over the horizon. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't stop now. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna mountains too high we can climb it. Feel this, we're taking the moment. There's no stopping us. Hold on, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't you give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. Don't you give up, don't give up on me. Don't you give up, don't you give up now. There's no stopping.
Okay, I hope the software is working better tonight. Last Saturday we had some issues with the software. The video was dragging, but I think it's okay now. I really do hope so. And so for that reason, I'm doing a part 2 to my appraisal versus the home inspection, because I'm sorry, this, when I go live here, it looks a little bit darker. I'm going to add a little bit more light over here with all my devices. Okay, that's a little bit better now. Okay. It's an important topic. It's a topic that many people confuse when they are first-time home buyers, the difference between the appraisal and the home inspection. And I also send out a weekly newsletter, and some newsletters are opened more than others. And the one I did on the home appraisal versus the home inspection, many people open that up, okay? And so I imagine that's a very important topic by the amount of people who open up the newsletter. So I want to go over that topic, and also hopefully all my videos will play flawlessly, okay? So with that in mind, let's go into our introduction for today. Okay, all right. So that's a little introduction of what we will talk about tonight. Also, did that cute little messenger video. People asking what's the difference between the appraisal and the home inspection. So let's go into that right away. All right. So number one, the appraisal is needed for a mortgage. So if you are purchasing your home with a mortgage, you must get an appraisal. Okay. If you're buying it for cash, you do not. But we'll get to that. So what is this appraisal? The appraisal will tell the bank that this house is worth the amount of money that you're asking for. So, for instance, if you're buying a house for $100,000, and let's say you're putting down 10%, you are financing $90,000. So, when the appraiser goes out there, they'll go look at the house and they will determine whether or not that house is actually worth $90,000. Because don't forget, that house, when it's put on the market, it's usually in the price range that the listing agent will recommend. And many times the seller will have an idea in their head and they'll say, let's try for this amount. And if it's a good listing agent, they will do a CMA or a comparative market analysis and see if for sure that price is the true market value of the house. Now, what is this comparative market analysis? All right. And basically, if I'm doing the CMA, I'm going to look within a mile radius of your home, and I will look at homes that are similar to yours. For instance, the amount of bedrooms would be the same. The amount of bathrooms would be the same. The amount of square footage would be in a difference of only 10%. Okay? And other features as well. If it has a garage, all right? If it has an in-ground pool, if it's near waterfront property, all of that comes into play. Okay? So I will look at homes, and especially homes that are pending and or have sold. Comps will come up as well with homes that are on the market. But again, if it's not in the pending status where there's a contract on it already and they're moving along, or if it's not sold, we're not sure yet if that's the true value of the house. Especially now, with it being a seller's market, we have a lot of listing agents and the sellers. I mean, the sellers are telling the listing agents to bring it up higher because there are not many homes on the market right now. And that's nationwide. That's not just Hampton Roads. So when you have less inventory, in our case, houses, and demand is strong right now with buyers, okay? What happens? Very basic economic rule. Prices will go up when demand is strong and inventory is low. So we have sellers that are really pushing the envelope, but you really want to make sure that it's great to win over the client and say, okay, your house could, here's my hand over here, could sell for this much, but really, that, well, we'll probably could get here, but just to win that listing. But that's not a good idea. That's not a good way to work. All right. I've always priced my homes in a price range that's suitable for that area. Okay. Because what you don't want a house staying on the market because Buyers now are very, very smart, okay, and they'll see, you know, what houses are available, and then they'll see how long it's been on the market at that price. And if it's been on the market for a while at that one price, they know that, you know, it's too high. Because houses, if they're priced correctly, we're getting them sold or getting them into contract within 24 to 48 hours of hitting the market. So if it's there for a while, it's priced too high. Then that property becomes stigmatized, meaning people say, all right, what's wrong with that house? It's been on the market for a while. In this market, it should have went a lot faster. Why is it still there? And so that's not a good thing, all right? So people are going to question that. And actually, if they want to make an offer on the house, it'll be even lower than even if you had lowered the price. If the seller said, all right, let's lower the price, but the buyer saw that it's been on the market for about 2 months already, they might push it even lower, okay? So the most important thing is to get that house priced correctly right off the bat. And that's what I aim to do, all right? I've had homes where I had one investor who bought a house through me, flipped it. I told him what price to stay in, and he put all these unbelievable upgrades in it. And he said, no, I want more money. I want more money. And I just followed him because he was pushing it and he put so much in, but it did not sell at that price. It ended up selling at the price that I first said when he purchased it. I said, you could get this amount for that house. And a lot of times it's based upon the neighborhood. You could build a mansion, right, with 6 or 7 bedrooms, with, you know, a swimming pool, with a moat going around the house. But if it's in a neighborhood of homes that with that amount of bedrooms, well, it wouldn't have 5 bedrooms, but let's say you put all the high-end appliances in there and countertops and cabinets. But basically, if that neighborhood yields a 250,000 and you're getting 300,000, or you're asking 300,000 for that house, it's really not going to fly. Okay, so you have to do it in a very intelligent way. You could ask for a little bit more, and once the appraiser goes in there, and they say, "Oh, there's a lot of nice upgrades," but it's not going to be another 50,000 above what the ongoing market value for that house in that neighborhood. All right. So what does it do? So like I said, the appraiser will go in there, look at comps, usually within a 1 mile radius, and they will look at similar homes. If you are in a very rural area where there's a sparsity between house, you have one house and then a couple of acres out, or it's sparse, it's very rural, it's very country. Each house has a lot of land. You might have to go 2 miles to do that. And they're going to say, okay, this house, based upon the square footage, the amount of bedrooms, the extras it has, it's in this price range. And what will make the difference, and this is getting very nuanced right now, they will look at the photos of other houses in the area and see what upgrades they have done. So you might have another house within that 1 mile radius, with the same amount of bedrooms, the same amount of baths. Okay, there's a very little difference in the square footage. Let's say it has a garage. All right. But when they look at the other property, they see that the kitchen has been updated, the bathroom has been updated, the HVAC system is being updated. Well, now that house has more value. See, when agents do a CMA, when they're pricing a property, it's very important to look at those photos of the other homes. because you could see what this one's a little bit higher and this one's a little bit lower. All right. And that's exactly what the appraiser would do. All right. So the appraiser is going to make sure that that house, and in this example, we're using 90,000, to make sure that house is worth 90,000 before the bank lends you that money. Okay. Now we're going to jump down to the next question that always comes up. And what if the appraisal price is less than the purchase price? All right. So let's say now that appraisal came out to 85,000 instead of 90,000. What happens then? Well, if that contract is written correctly, especially if it's FHA, or I should say the buyer's agent will write in there that this house has to appraise by 90,000. Otherwise, if we can't negotiate a newer price, the buyer has a right to be released from the contract and get back their earnest money deposit, EMD. In this area of Virginia and Hampton Roads, the most common earnest money deposit is $500. Could it be more? Yes. The more of the down payment, it shows you how much more earnest you are, or how much genuine you are, that you really want the house. Okay? If you could put down 1,000, it's better, especially in this type of market where there's lots of competition. It shows that you are willing to take that risk of putting down $1,000 to secure the house. All right? So now, in most situations that I've worked with, and I really haven't had a situation. I only had like one situation where we really had a battle over the price because the appraisal came down. But in most situations, the seller will lower the price to that appraisal amount. And I don't want to say in most situations, but a good amount of situations. Let me correct myself. In this type of market right now, that it's a seller's market, sometimes they won't. I have a Facebook friend that is a agent out in Las Vegas, and the appraisal came $7,000 less than the price on the contract, and the buyer paid the $7,000 difference. All right. Now, Las Vegas is a very hot market, no pun intended. I mean, it's hot out there. But, people who go out there, they buy big, beautiful homes. They have money, and $7,000 to people in a certain amount of income who will receive a certain amount of income, it's not going to bother them. So they pay the difference. Here, again, if the seller won't budge on the price, all right, the buyer again could pay that difference, or they could be released from the contract without any type of liability, and they will get back their earnest money deposit. Okay. Now, other things could happen too. It's, everything's negotiated. For instance, if the buyer asks for some closing cost assistance from the seller, and they say, okay, how about if we forget the closing cost assistance, and that'll bring it up to the 90,000. There's all different ways to negotiate it, and that's a whole other live stream episode. But you could do something like that, or you could say, okay, as the buyer, I could say I could give you another 3,000, which would make it 88,000. Could you come down like $2,000? So that's another way it could be negotiated. But basically, if the seller won't lower the price, you could be released from the contract, or somehow you could make up that difference. Okay? All right. Now, we're going to go back to, now we're going to come to the home inspection. Now, the home inspection is basically for the buyer, where we say buyer beware, meaning the seller, the seller has to report major problems of the house that they know of. So, for instance, if they know that the heating is not working, they have to report that. They have to tell you that. Anything that they know that is really detrimental to the house, they have to tell you that. If the roof is leaking, they need to tell you that. All right. But it's also, in a sense, when the purchaser is buying the house, they really have the job of checking out everything about the house and what's good about it and what's bad about it. Okay? So the home inspector will go there. And let me make one point very clear right now. The home inspection is not mandatory, meaning the bank does not need a report from the home inspector that it's good. It's not needed, all right? Okay, that's not part of the approval process. The appraisal is needed for the bank, but the home inspection is not. By the way, and a little side note, in this area of Hampton, we're in Hampton Roads, and we're surrounded by water. The house has to be checked for termites and moisture damage, okay? And if there is any type of damage to the house via termites or moisture damage, it has to be repaired. And if there were signs of termite activity, it has to be sprayed to kill the termites, all right? And once that is done, the termite company issues a clear certificate, and that's what the bank needs, all right? Now, you're going to see us go down to a caption here where it'll say lender required repairs. Any repairs involving termite or moisture damage would be a lender required repair, meaning that if the termite inspector goes in there and finds active termites or wood that has been damaged by termites, that has to be repaired before the bank releases the money, okay? But going back to the home inspection, it's mostly for the piece of the buyer that they know that they are buying a house that is in good condition. It doesn't have to be great condition, but there isn't any major or even minor things to it. Because what happens, once the home inspector does that inspection, they will write up a big report, and they'll give you reports on how the electricity is going, how the heating system is going, how the appliances, if they're acting correctly. All right, and there's even more to it. They'll check all the sockets, the outlets, to make sure they are wired correctly. They'll make sure that certain things are up to code. All right, and they will give you a report. Once you get the report, you sit down with your buyer's agent, hopefully me, okay, and you say, okay, I would like the seller to repair this and repair that, repair that. I'll take care of this, but these items I want to be repaired. And then we give that report, what we wrote up, what repairs we requested, along with the home inspection, and we send that to the listing agent. And then the listing agent sits down with their client and say they're asking for this to be repaired. Now the seller could say, well, they could say, I'll do everything, which is great. Or they'll say, well, I'll do this and this and this, but let the buyer, they could take care of that. And it goes back to us. And it's another form of negotiation. All right. And we go back and forth, and the buyer says, all right, I'll do this, but I really want them to do that. And it goes back and forth. But we eventually ratify it, where the buyer agrees to do certain repairs and the seller agrees to do certain repairs, or the seller just agrees to do everything, okay? And which is the perfect situation. I just had one like that, and the seller did everything that my buyer requested, and life was great. But sometimes, it doesn't always work out that great. There's always some sort of back and forth going. All right. Now, let's take the situation where the buyer and the seller cannot agree. The buyer is asking for certain repairs to be made by the seller, and the seller says, forget it. Then you have the right to be released from the contract with no liability and getting back your earnest money deposit. Okay? Because when you have a ratified contract with a home inspection, all right, you have a ratified contract with a contingency on it. That means that this contract will continue contingent upon a successful home inspection and negotiation on repairs. Okay? So it's contingent upon that. So if you can't come and meet heads when it comes to the home inspection, you have the right to be released. Now, just a side note, there's deadlines on this. You have to do this within a certain time period. And if I'm not your agent, make sure that your agent knows that, all right, we have to get this done by the 7th day after ratification or the 10th day after ratification. Because if you don't get the report out to the listing agent in time and you ask for repairs, the seller could say, forget it. The deadline is over. Now you're taking the house as is, the way it is, all right? One more thing is that a lot of people will use the appraisal just to know whether or not to continue with the purchase. And that happens when we have a house that, for instance, is a foreclosure or a short sale. These are distressed properties. And the home inspection is only for the edification for the buyer or whether or not they want to continue with the sale. The owner, which could be a person who's maybe they're selling it short. It's a distressed sale, and selling short is a whole other topic that we could go into. All right, and they're saying this is only for you. I'm making no repairs. Okay, so this is for you. This home inspection that you're doing is for you to decide whether or not to continue with the purchase. All right, and that's the reason why it's done. All right. Again, to review, the home inspection is not mandatory, but highly, and let me repeat that, highly recommended. You really should have a home inspection, okay? It's very important to have that, all right? So let's go just to this topic over here. Lender require repairs. Now, the appraiser has gone in there, and I've just had the situation where the steps going up to the house had no railing, and they were pretty high. I believe here the number is 30 inches. So if the and don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's 30 inches. So if the steps going up are higher than 30 inches, it has to have a handrail. And why is that? Well, the bank wants to make sure that you don't have an accident, you don't fall off the steps and become injured, and you can't make your mortgage, and now the bank is hurting, they're not getting money in. All right. So, for instance, that would be a lender required repair, and that would have to be in place before the bank closes on the loan or the mortgage. All right. Because otherwise they won't. They won't close on it. Those railings have to be up. Something else could be if the house has no heat. The heating system is not working. All right. That has to be repaired before the bank closes. A house could have heat. Doesn't have to have air conditioning, but it has to have heat. Okay. So the bank won't close until those lender required repairs are made. One thing I want to add, and again, every time I do a live stream and I prepare, and there's always more information that I could go over. In most contracts that we write, when it comes to lender required repairs, they are usually at 1% of the purchase price. So, for instance, if a house is purchased, priced, and the contract price is at $100,000, and we put down that the seller will be responsible up to 1% of the purchase price of the house for repairs, that would be $1,000. So what would that mean? That means that the seller can't balk at a repair of $1,000. They have to do it. Okay, they agreed within the ratified contract that they would pay $1,000 to make repairs requested by the bank. Now, sometimes it will be higher than that. And in most situations, the seller will make those repairs over that 1% just to get the house sold. All right. Now, I just had a closing where it was above 1%, but the seller asked the buyer to make up the difference because they actually they paid for their closing cost and they gave them a home warranty. So in this situation, the buyer paid the overage over the 1%. All right, so that's built in the contract. And most sellers will just agree to the 1%, especially in today's market. You could try to sneak in there at 2% or 3%. I've done that once before, and they said, no, it has to go back down to 1%. Okay? So that is what has to be done. Okay? The appraisal is needed by the bank. It has to be done unless you're buying it for cash. Now, the transactions that I've done where the person has bought it with cash, they were investors, and they knew they were buying the house below market value because they were distressed properties. So they did not need to do an appraisal on it because you could still have an appraisal even if you're buying with cash. And the only time a person would do that, because let's say it's a regular resale, the house is perfect, and this one person, I've never had this situation, they had $100,000, they had $200,000, whatever, to buy it, but they wanted to make sure that this price that they're paying for was the true market value. And in that situation, a cash buyer would most likely get an appraisal. But with investors, because they're buying them in most situations well below the market value, they won't do the appraisal. All right. So we were on for about a half hour. I think we covered a lot. I hope I explained it a lot more. I actually had a graphic, but I won't go to that graphic right now. I think it's. I think it was well. I think I explained it well. I hope you agree. So, but I hear my producer Leonard Potapkin calling me. We might have a special guest in the audience that I'm not aware of.
Chris. Great news. We have a special guest in our studio audience. He is an American singer, songwriter, musician and record producer. A prominent figure in popular music during the second half of the 20th century. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stevie Wonder.
Well, that was nice seeing him again. He actually appeared on our first show, and he came back. That was very nice of him. So that ends today's show. I want to do a show on President Joe Biden's plan for giving some sort of credit for first-time home buyers. It's going to be around $15,000, I heard. I want to read more about it before I have a discussion on it. May do that next week if I have enough material. But if it won't be next week, it'll be in the upcoming weeks, because I think that's pretty exciting. I think that will help the new or first-time home buyers to enter the market. That should be very helpful. If you've been watching other of my live streams, I always said that we need to get the COVID-19 under control, and we need another stimulus package to go out, and hopefully that will go out soon. I think and I pray that we're getting this under control. The numbers are going back down again, but they're going back down from a splurge that we had after the holidays, where a lot of people got together. So we had a big spike, and now they're coming down. But it's not like it's down below to where it was prior to the surge. All right, it's getting better, but we still have to wear a mask. We need to wash our hands. We need to be socially distanced. And if we do that, the light is at the end of the tunnel, and the real estate market, as for for sales, is going good, but we need more inventory. The more inventory we go out there, we have more buyers who could secure homes, and as we get the economy going stronger, all right. And when I say stronger, with more people back into the job market, the economy is not just the stock market, it's the job market, is companies opening up their doors again and rehiring their people, rehiring their staff. There's a lot going to it. I believe we're on the right path. And once that moves along, we're going to have a fantastic summer. I mean, we'll probably have a fantastic rest of the year, even when it gets close to the holidays at the end of this year, where sometimes the real estate market closes down. I think it's going to be really, really strong, but we still have to get over some hurdles, and we still have to, abide by COVID-19 guidelines, wearing masks, washing hands, keeping social distance. So please remain strong, be good, be nice to each other, and there's a lot of great things in the future, okay? So I will see you next week, okay? Take care.